Great. All right. So, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Lori. I'm joining you from Yerevan, Armenia today, and I'll be getting today's presentation rolling. Um, we are very pleased to have you all join us for today's program presented by IAALA, the International Association of Armenian Librarians and Archivists. IAALA was created to provide a worldwide platform for archivists and librarians working with Armenian collections to network with each other, share information and ideas and solve challenges, promote issues important to our field, encourage participation and provide mentorship, and to uncover, surface, and map hidden collections, both physical and digital. We invite you to check out our new and improved website, yalla.org, IAALA.org, to find out more about us and to, view past programs as well. And just a reminder that this is an all volunteer effort. And so if you're interested in joining us in this effort, we absolutely welcome you. So please reach out to us. So let's introduce today's speaker. So we have, hold on one moment. Um, our speaker today is Ani Schug from the project called Rerooted. Rerooted was founded in 2017 by Anush Bagdasaryan and Ani Schug, two Armenian diasporans, based on the values of being a trustworthy and open archive that could be used for action. They began their collection by focusing on the Syrian Armenian community, aiming to document both the harms experienced during war and the rich identity and community that had been cultivated over more than a century. So, building on the philosophy that they developed and the skills they gained from that first collection, they expanded their work to Armenian communities around the world, gathering testimonies from over 25 communities and compiling more than 400 stories. Their mission is to celebrate and explore Armenian identity in communities globally and to advocate for just and safe futures. They produce accessible digital collections of testimonies, photographs, and documents designed to create resources that showcase the resilience of Armenian communities and to serve as tools for advocating for their prosperity in the face of modern day challenges. A little bit about our speaker, Ani. Ani is a legal representative for immigrants applying for permanent status, citizenship, and family reunification in Philadelphia. Ani's undergraduate degree is from Pomona College in politics and Middle Eastern studies. She's also studied and can speak Armenian, Arabic, Spanish, and Swahili. So we welcome you, Ani, and we're all looking forward to hearing more about Rerooted and what it is that you guys do. So take it away.
Oh, thank you so much, Lori and Yala, for inviting Rerooted to speak. And I'm really excited to share more about what we do, and then also at the end answer any questions and really like get any feedback that all of you who have have a lot of expertise in this field, related fields, can share. So let me start the presentation. Okay, great. Um, so I feel like the name is more obvious to Armenians, but we like just kind of always explaining how we came up with the name and sort of it guides a lot of our inspiration for what we do. So it's a play on words between like rerouted and or saying rerooted and then kind of rerouting. As Lodi mentioned, we started with a collection of Syrian Armenians, their testimonies, and really kind of they exemplify this idea that no matter how many times Armenian communities have been rerouted, so whether it was from the genocide or then from the Syrian conflict to Armenia or Europe or other countries, Armenians are always trying to like reroute themselves, create new communities that really showcase different forms of our identity and ways that we keep our communities alive. So that kind of idea of both displacement, the like difficulty and like horror of it, but then also the resilience that comes out of it is sort of motivating to everything that we do. So yeah, as we now said twice, we started in 2017. Anush and I were met at the Claremont colleges. So she was at Claremont McKenna, I was at Pomona, and started like our Armenian association there, and just we're friends. And then she, right before we graduated, had the idea and was applying to different forms of funding to collect testimonies of Syrian Armenians. So the war in Syria had been going on for like already over 5 years at that point. And Anush is now an international criminal attorney. So even back then was very interested in kind of the legal and justice side of what was happening, and had worked with organizations working in on the Syrian civil war, but kind of always noticed that Armenian voices were missing, and not usually out of any kind of malice, but just it's such an important community for us as Armenians, but to the world could just be seen as the tiny minority community getting overlooked. And so the goal of the project we kind of came to create was to collect testimonies of Syrian Armenians, to, one, kind of preserve the beauty of the story of rerouting in Syria and then in Armenia or wherever they went, and then also to have documentation of what happened to people during the war, whether that be kind of direct attacks from different armed groups, having people lose houses during the war, what happened to them once they left, and just now kind of how the community is trying to survive. So that first summer we were in Armenia, we collected 80 testimonies and we're very naive, like, oh, every day we collect the testimonies, we're just going to sit down and transcribe them and translate them into English. It'll be so easy. And sort of found that was not the case. But out of having to do all that follow-up work of again, saving the stories, transcribing them, making a website. Out of all of that, we kind of realized we learned a lot and we wanted to keep doing it, and keep kind of making this a sustainable project. So we had for a while continued with the Syria community and went to France to get the perspective of Syrian Armenians who went to Europe instead of Armenia. Um, and then sort of out of that trip, we met a lot of like Iraqi Armenians saying like, oh, we have like a similar um, kind of pattern of what happened to us. Like we would also be interested in sharing our stories. And at that point, we didn't know if we should expand, what we should do. But especially like kind of during COVID, when we were just at home and had time to really keep growing, we decided we wanted um, to yeah, expand our reach. So kind of our biggest community collections that we have now are the ones marked in red. So Syria, and then we've also in the last few years done a lot of more pointed work with Artsakh, and then also survivors of pogroms in Azerbaijan in the 90s, and then especially Anush's family is from Uruguay and Argentina, so we also have a big collection from Armenians in South America. So those are kind of where most of our interviews are, but through different models that I've talked about, we started expanding our reach. So even Armenians in Singapore, India, we had a student go to, other places in South America, and like of course Europe and the Middle East. So what we've also always tried from the beginning with why we started Rerooted is not just to collect stories to kind of just have them preserved, which is an important part, but to be actively using them. So whether that be for kind of two main branches. So Anush, of course, being a lawyer, leads our justice efforts, which are using the testimonies and the stories we receive to write reports um, to different international bodies or just the general public, especially for places like Syria or Artsakh where there's current conflicts. And then also to use the testimonies, and this is where we've been kind of, as we go along, learning uh, different strategies and different things we can do, but for kind of strengthening and reimagining and making the Armenian identity feel more alive. So we've done some like linguistic preservation work, or like through our testimonies, been able to support linguistic preservation work. Want people to use like this feeling of storytelling as a way to feel connected to their identity, or read other stories as a way to feel connected to their identity, use them in educational materials for non-Armenians to learn about the community, and kind of issues about diaspora and being displaced. So those are kind of our two main, we kind of see them as like our yeah, two main parts of our mission. So today we'll kind of talk more about the our methodologies and our work with Armenian identity and preservation. But there is a whole other side, kind of focusing more on justice that Anush leads more. So I just wanted to show our site a little bit. Uh, One second. Let me. Oh, I guess you can. Yeah, you just see the screen. So yeah. So as I mentioned, our biggest collections are for these four communities. For the others, most of them, and we'll get to this later. We have a lot more testimonies than we've been able to publish. So you can see ones where we have interviews done, but we haven't been able to get them up to the site. And then there's some where we have some uploaded just on YouTube, so you could see like a few of the videos, but we haven't really done our full. Um, Kind of full publication. Our Syria one, since it's the one we've had for the longest, kind of has the most built out. So on the side, there's different resources, like we have lesson plans related to this collection. We had an intern make a cultural heritage map of different sites in Armenia, some all the reports that we've written about the Syrian Armenian community. But then here is kind of, our testimonies. We want to be kind of the heart of what we do. Um, so everyone's kind of profile and their testimony is down here. And then to try to make it easier for students or researchers or anyone to sort for an interview they might be specifically interested, you could sort by um, where people were from in Syria or now where they've ended up. Um, Based on like someone's interest, if they were looking for women's stories particularly or a certain age group, to kind of filter out. So I'll try. I love the older ones always. And then once someone finds an interview that they're interested in, here is, and I'll kind of talk more about our process to make our transcripts, but you can watch their testimony and follow along um, in in English, and then also in Western Armenian, have the interactive transcript there, or also just download them as a plain PDF, if that's easier for someone. So that's kind of how the website is generally organized. Let me go back here. Okay, great. Um, Yeah, so I just want to talk a little bit about our methodologies. Some of this I already touched on. So initially, when it was just Anush and I, it was we had decided to work on Syria, but then as we decided to expand, it's kind of been more collaboration based for what community we focus on next. So some have been like members of the community or grassroots organizations there saying this is something that they're interested in and want to support a project. So for example, the Pogroms collection was the education committee of ANCA in California had an interest in preserving some of those stories and came to us for a collaboration. Or with Artsakh, we worked really closely with All for Armenia because they were working with different humanitarian needs for, when after the 2023 ethnic cleansing. But also a lot of people were talking about wanting to share their story, and that wasn't something they specialized in, but we came to collaborate to be able to work on sort of this second, maybe sometimes secondary need of the community. We've also had a lot of student interest or just volunteers who come and say, this is something I want to do. So there was a non-Armenian student from Singapore who went and did interviews there, and the same with India, or students who have gone, to Uruguay and Chile in South America. And then something we're trying to kind of explore more and try to build out is like individuals. We've only had like two or three so far, but who just want to learn how to be able to do a oral history with their grandparent or someone they know, to be able to contribute to our collection. So then once we kind of find students or organizations who are interested in working together, we do a training. So going through our different oral history uh, kind of style and how we do our interviews, and then also just practical things about how to save their interviews after, get them to us, all of that. We'll do some practice interviews. Anush's mom has been a practice interviewee many times with our students. And as we were like trying to grow, we've also been trying to experiment, especially for people who want to kind of do one-off interviews, just like, oh, I want to interview my someone in my family, experimenting with trying to record our trainings, or have a way for someone to kind of do it online, which has been hard because I feel like an in-person or like virtual, but live training has so much value. So we've been trying to work on different methods of that. But for someone who might just do one interview, it's hard to keep doing something live over and over again. Um, and then we have a process, of course, for consent. So first finding interviewees who are interested in the project. Um, Sometimes people are, it was interesting for Syria and sometimes with Artsakh too. Maybe our initial interest is, oh, we want to know about what's happening now in the community and what you've gone through recently. But sometimes a lot of people's motivations for wanting to be a part of the project was they cared more about their grandparents or their ancestors, what they had gone through in the genocide. Or maybe with Artsakh, someone is more motivated about having their story shared about what they just went through. So kind of meeting people where they're at with what's motivating them to want to document their story, and letting them lead what they want to focus on in the interview. So some people for Syria, for example, didn't want to talk about the war, didn't feel safe or comfortable, and that's okay. We wouldn't push them. We would, focus more as a family history and then also oral history of their life while they were in Syria before the war. And then so yeah, so part of that talking before the interview about um, who we are, what the interview would be like, what would they feel comfortable with. If people, our preferred method is video, because part of our goal is also to raise awareness and always being able to see someone's face as they talk is powerful. But if someone wants to do just audio or just have their transcript published with a pseudonym, we're open to what makes them feel comfortable. And then also eventually signing, a formal consent form. And we also always explain our goal is to be a public archive because I think there's a lot of benefit of a more confidential or more protected archive because maybe it can have certain information that someone wouldn't feel comfortable sharing publicly, but always we've kind of emphasized accessibility and making that clear to our interviewees. The point of this is to be accessible in public, um, to kind of be able to increase access to these stories. So making that very clear with our interviewees that if they do share their story, it will be um, publicly accessible as like and could be used as an advocacy and education. And then eventually them signing a consent form that reflects that. And especially too, because it can be a hard conversation to have because we can say this is how we will use these interviews. But once they're online in public, we also can't control what someone might try to do with them. Um, so we understand that not everybody would want to share in that way. And then finally, of course, the interview. So we use a oral history, so open-ended question methodology, kind of going chronologically through someone's life, and then also what they know about their family before them. Sometimes based on like the collection, we might mix in other methodologies. So for example, at one point with our Syria interviews, at the end, we included like more of like a quantitative survey based method after we would do the oral history about sort of what justice would mean for Syrian Armenians if they were ever to go back to Syria, what kind of conditions they would need. And then sometimes with the Artsakh collections, we do our oral history interview. And then at the end, if someone experienced a particular harm during one of the wars, if they're comfortable kind of also doing a more legal style interview at the end as like a fact-finding information. So our main thing that we publish and do is oral history, but sometimes mix in other methods based on needs. Um, and then where you probably all know ends up being some of the most work and difficulties in getting things published is everything that happens after the interview. So right now what we're doing is having different like cloud-based storage just to get now that it's not just Anush and I collecting the interviews, we need ways for people to from anywhere to get us the interviews. So initially kind of they have them on we provide a hard drive so the person doing the interview will have it, transfer it to me via the cloud, and then I also save it on a hard drive and kind of do some of the more like organizing the metadata, different information about the interviewee. We're trying to play around with maybe like a server system where it can be kind of physical and accessed remotely at the same time. But that has always been, and as yeah, Nora mentioned before, even with like many physical copies, you still never know like what could happen to something. So we've been working on different methods of saving and organizing all the testimonies. Um, and then one of kind of the biggest work, but one of the most important things we found is the transcription and translation process. And so we have been I think we've kind of built a system that works a lot better than when we first started. So we have like an online training and use the Amara platform. So it doesn't do the transcribing, but it's a system for keeping like the Armenian transcript first and the English translation and adding time codes so they can be those interactive subtitles I showed or yeah, interactive transcript or the subtitles. And basically like when we receive funding, some of it could go to like field costs, but a lot of it really is to transcription and translation. But we've been really like proud to work with. So sometimes it'll be like Syrian or Lebanese Armenians or Artsakhis in this most recent year doing the transcription in their own dialect. And then it's also kind of a form of like a flexible, like kind of second job for people um, that they can, after their it's not like it can't be like a full-time job, but after work, have another form of income through using their linguistic skills. And then something that came out of this, we had like no idea of something to expect, is because we had transcribed all of our Syria interviews into Western Armenian. We were someone told us it was like the first kind of big digital spoken Western Armenian corpus that could be used for different linguistic preservation and yeah, different processes. So out of our Syria collection, we're working with Josep Dolatian and also Sam Chakmakjian. They're making like a automated speech to text recognition software. So now we're able to use, now for our next kind of batch, we had a bunch of ones from Lebanon. They made automatic transcripts for us, and the transcribers were like, "This is so much better." Of course, they still have to go back through and fix things, but it's at least like a basis. So that was really cool that kind of accidentally we did something that was very helpful. And then of course translating, to English just to increase accessibility and be able to reach a wider audience afterwards. And then of course, even after all that's been done, have someone else review for accuracy, and then either Anush or myself review again. Um, as I mentioned, this conversation about being public, a lot of, people know that they're public when they share, but especially with the Artsakh collection, kind of doing a second review if there's something that could possibly, make someone more of a target from Azeri officials or others, or just kind of being a little bit extra sensitive if there's something we decide like we'll keep this internal, but maybe we don't publish it, or maybe we want to like take out a section about the war or something like that. It's a hard balance because we don't want to edit what people are saying, but just taking out anything that could be definitely a safety concern. And then again, another step of finally getting them into our website. I've been just teaching myself. We have our websites based on Squarespace, just teaching myself how to do things. And then if we have chance to do the next step would be kind of doing qualitative coding or indexing of the interviews so that they're more easy to use in our different projects and publications. Because if someone wants to know about maybe like what languages people spoke at home in Syria, if we have that already kind of set of like these are all the quotes from all hundreds of interviews that talk about that, it's so much easier to use. So we have through like students and interns been able to code all our Syria interviews, but not the ones since. So like thinking about different ways, especially now that I think there's someone already mentioned there's technologies that do some of that indexing or can kind of scan for themes automatically. Um, yeah, and then kind of the next step after that we always want to focus is like how to make this a living archive that can be used for things and isn't just kind of like sitting on a shelf. not being accessed by anyone. So I'll go quickly through the justice side because I don't think that's like our main focus for today. But kind of what can we use these testimonies for? So as I mentioned already, publications, we've submitted reports to different UN mechanisms, also the International Criminal Court about Artsakh, different like explainers for the general community about what's going on with um, certain topics. Um, Also doing like have different kind of like services in terms of training, working with law school clinics. As unfortunately, especially with what happened in Artsakh, it was sort of a chance for a lot of students to get involved to do direct advocacy and using survivor testimonies to build reports to be submitted, and then also engaging with the community and thinking about what are the needs in Armenian communities that are facing conflicts of what kind of more concretely they want to be advocated for, like especially now in Syria, it kind of felt like a few years ago we reached a point of nothing, like kind of a status quo, and then now that there's a whole new government, there's like a lot of questions reopened up about safety of the Armenian community, kind of long term. Um, and then on the identity side, this is where we've been trying to really like make charts like this to think about what we can concretely contribute and build out of the testimonies. So one thing is that we like being is kind of just like a more accessible primary source, even though we know someone, couldn't fully maybe do their own research out of these testimonies, but being a starting place for students or researchers to get an idea of what community members are saying, and then maybe they can build interview projects or other work out of that. So being like a rich primary resource. And then also, as I mentioned, linguistic corpus for spoken or for different Armenian dialects. So we already have the one for Western Armenian, and then now with our Artsakh testimonies, there's over 80 that are transcribed in Artsakhi Barbar. And so now that a student is kind of building out, I don't know what has to be done on the back end to kind of make it usable for other researchers, but someone is doing that. One thing we haven't published yet, but I've been working internally is indexing and having an archive of photos and documents that people share when we do the interviews. Um, and then kind of in services, been thinking about, as we said, building out a platform. We have a model, but I think it definitely can be better so that people kind of more one-on-one individual basis can learn how to do oral history testimony and complete it with family members and submit. And then the resources is where we're always trying to grow and think of other ideas. So we already have some lesson plans, building that out. We just got an email I was excited about. Facing History and ourselves emailed and said, "Oh, we have a section of one of your interviews that we really want to use in our one of our resources." So like that was great. I was like, "This is what we dreamed of." And then like maps of cultural heritage sites, especially with Artsakh, thinking about ways to integrate testimonies into kind of like virtual ways of preserving um, what has been lost for now because, there's just no physical access. And then also, I think a great language learning material. I mean, I always remember like our Western Armenian uh, things we were reading or using, like sometimes felt unrelatable or, not like current. So having like kind of a big resource of um, people in the modern day speaking Western Armenian or whatever dialect it may be. Yeah, so that's just like a big overview of what we do. I would love to hear questions. I think I didn't read them, but saw some in the chat already. And then also any feedback, if ideas about collaborations, ways to kind of improve our process or accessibility, ideas about how you think Rerooted in our interviews can be used in, um, your libraries and schools or what would be helpful.
Thank you, Ani, so much. This was amazing.
Thank you.
It was so interesting to hear how it transformed from this like grassroots project into this what it is now, which is this huge operation. Uh, I have several questions, and I'm sure other people do as well. So, I mean, anyone else can jump in with a question first if they would like. I know we had one in the chat. Um, oh, we have two in the chat. Okay. So Nora is asking about Iranian Armenian communities.
Yes.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, so that's one of the communities where we've had kind of more one-off interviews. So someone submitted one they did with their grandmother, and Anush has done a few, um, kind of as she can, but it's definitely a community where when we get the chance, we would love to do like kind of more of a concerted effort. Um, so it's something that we are trying. I would say we're not like kind of even formally planning, but on our list of what we want to build out. And it's been interesting too, thinking about like different collaborations and funding. So, like for example, for some of the South America ones, it was partnering with um, like where Anish went to school at Harvard, like Spanish speaking or Hispanic student groups who are interested in kind of learning about a new community, different like smaller groups in South America. So it could be something similar for Iran where it could be collaborating with an Armenian group or collaborating with an Iranian group, that wants to preserve a minority community. So yeah, we definitely have some interviews so far, but they haven't been like a concerted effort yet.
If I may, you mentioned Singapore and India, so there is a huge link of Iranian Armenian, Indian Armenians, and Singapore Armenians, and most probably those Indian and Singapore
That's true.
Armenians are Iranian Armenians, or ancestors are Iranian Armenians. So that was my the trigger for asking this question.
Oh yeah, it's
You're
great.
right. I mean, I think the problem is. Your wonderful work that you are doing is not known to a lot of people. And I'm hoping this is one of the ways that, a lot of other communities, Ethiopian communities, for
Yeah.
instance, um, uh, they can learn about this project. And obviously, this is a volunteer work, and they can organize and work with you. It's not like you go and approach them, but maybe they organize themselves and approach you. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of archives, digital archives, people are collecting in very small ways in different, websites and different platforms. And maybe if they know about you, sort of, they can come together and work with you. So thank you very much for your work. This is extremely important work. I am flabbergasted. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you. I know you shared resources with me before this talk. And yeah, that's a great idea. And it's interesting too now that we're trying, like, even I've been thinking a lot in the website of like categorizing different interviews because I mean the Iranian to India Singapore link can go back centuries, but then so there's like all these like long migrations, but then even someone's testimony is like Syria, it could be Syria to Armenia to Europe, and then it's like, okay, which bucket do we put it in? So been thinking about everyone is so interconnected. So yeah, ways of kind of linking together and linking with different projects where people have started already.
We have another question in the chat, and thank you so much, Ani, for your presentation. Your work is amazing. It's so great. Ani asks, have you reached out to the Genocide Education Project and they can be integrated in this effort?
That is a great suggestion. I think possibly Anush is such a good networker. I feel like she would know the answer more. Are they based in San Francisco? If anyone knows.
I believe so.
Okay, then possibly. But yeah, definitely we kind of from since the beginning days, we had a time where we were like working on lesson plans and kind of had to focus on education and haven't gotten back to it recently. But I think kind of yeah, collaborating with them and then like with Facing History who just reached out is definitely yeah, an area to explore. I'm writing a note for myself. Roxanne. Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you.
Ani, I have a question more about the administrative side. And thank you so much for sharing. This is really an incredible project, and I'm just so grateful that this work is being done. I know there are a lot of people out there who kind of maybe have similar projects or want to get started, and I was wondering if you know, there was any way to kind of share your story of how you got started in a way, in a format that maybe could be helpful for people who are, pursuing similar projects. Because it's really such a success story, starting from like a grassroots idea that I feel like even just as a form of guidance too, that's like another dimension of how it could be helpful to other communities.
Thank you so much for saying that. I think that's a good point. Yeah, because we've been thinking about like trainings in terms of like transcription and like doing the interviews, but haven't thought on kind of more of a just like keeping a project going. I think also Anush and I are always doubting ourselves. We're like, oh, we just kind of figured this out as we went along. So like, do we actually know what we're doing? But and even I think that like vulnerability can be helpful to others too, because especially like other students don't, we were students when we started this, like we didn't know fully what we were expecting, but that's part of the process and being able to learn from that. So yeah, I like that idea. Um, yeah, and I feel like too, we always try to be intentional with, I think you all feel this in your organization, being like an open place for anyone to join and not falling into those traps of like old, like different Armenian institutions where it's like, no, we're just doing our thing, we're just doing our thing. And yeah, finding ways to collaborate.
Following up on Lori's question and what you just said, Ani, I was curious if you had any previous oral history experience prior to doing this project, and if not, I mean, did you guys have to consult with any archivists or oral historians, or what was that process like?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Nothing like formal. So like we had both taken just a few like kind of like social anthropology method classes. But I guess we're more kind of just about interviewing in general. But we did before went to Armenia that first summer, did a workshop at UCLA in oral history methodologies, which of course it wasn't, it was kind of like it was over a few days, but kind of like something to get us started. Um, and then uh, kind of just like self-studying and through practice, getting started. So definitely like, yeah, learned a lot as we went, but did have like some basis before we started. And then now I think both of us in the legal field learning a lot about how to interview on sensitive topics. Um, Even though the actual interviews themselves are completely different, like how you would do a legal interview or oral history interview. But I think a lot of the skills of being like trauma informed and um, yeah, to how to talk about sensitive topics, I learned a lot through work.
Um, I guess just a follow-up question because you both are kind of working in the legal sphere. Um, is there, in terms of being used for legal testimony, are there things that you're kind of keeping in mind when you conduct these oral histories or like certain methodologies that you're kind of cognizant of using?
Yeah, that's a yeah, good question. So I think um, sometimes it can inform like the follow-up questions we ask. So for example, like if someone has mentioned that they've been the victim of well, wait, I'll answer first kind of on two levels. So I think one, um, because these are like really sensitive topics, we do always explain to someone like this is public, whatever you say, is going to be public. And of course, always at the end, sometimes they'll say, actually, I don't want that part public or something like that. So first, like kind of on a informed consent basis, letting people know when we're doing like a public oral history interview, but Anush has also been involved in doing like fact-finding legal interviews post 2023 with Arts Offices. So kind of first making sure it's clear like which type of interview the person is participating in. But then and then sort of like within whatever interview we're doing, a lot of the legal training has helped with it, whether for a fact-finding interview or a oral history interview, kind of knowing what follow-ups to ask. So in terms of like one thing with a lot of the testimonies in Syria is, people's houses were hit with bombs, but they may not necessarily be able to pinpoint where like the shelling came from. So like what types of like follow-up questions are helpful just to paint a picture of like the context of when those shellings happened, or someone did have interactions with armed groups, but they don't know who they are. Like what questions about like uniforms or like accents or languages they heard them speaking. So kind of like on that level to get a full picture of what someone's saying. Um, and then I think also some methodologies around like I feel like for me with it's interesting. Like I think a lot about it at work, like kind of this like trauma informed, and we say like we don't want to re-traumatize people and telling their story. So it's like there's certain ways to ask questions. But then recently for me, I think what I found really important is just that like initial consent conversation is so important because these topics are so difficult. I can't guarantee that someone won't be re-traumatized telling it. So kind of making sure they know this is exactly what we're going to talk about, and then that person having the ability themselves, I can't think of the word. But yeah, the like the ability themselves to choose whether they want to engage in that, or maybe now's not the right time, or kind of what if they want to do it or not. But and then if they do want to do it, providing chances for breaks and stopping, or being able to, revoke that consent once they've given it. Yeah. I don't know if that was specific enough, but
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much.
Nora, you had your hand raised.
So regarding the open access archives, that's what you're aiming at. But because of the sensitivity of some of the archives you have and interviews you have, do you keep, in a sense, because there is such a thing for archives, when you're collecting archival materials, you can choose not to make it public for, let's say, I think the legal years is 70 years. But you can say after 100 years or after when I'm dead, you can make these archives public. So do you keep or collecting such archives? Let's say it's such a sensitive topic, or as you said, they're traumatized, they don't want to, but because of the nature of the archive is so important, and it's sort of documentation of events and history in a sense. So do you have any kind of archives that you do have them, but they're not making it public,
that's
regardless of what your aim is in that sense? Thank
yeah,
you.
that's I'm like writing notes. That's such a good thing because there's only been a few where someone did want to document their story, but then said, do not make it public. And we've kept them internally, but without maybe like a super clear purpose, kind of more to have maybe for our own, like eventually if knowing their story, if it is helpful, and then like we hear another story that's similar for kind of one of the more legal aspects. But thinking about a consent process where like after 100 years or whatever, it kind of goes to history is a great idea um, that I want to look more into because yeah, this like very long term having these Armenian stories from this century is so important. Yeah, that's something we haven't done yet, but want to look into.
Any other questions? Um, I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but how exactly do you find the people who give you their testimonies? Do you reach out to them? Do they reach out to you? Is it both ways?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it kind of depends on the community. But one great thing also about having like doing collaborations is often the collaborator has like a lot more of the on the ground contacts. So like with the Syria collection, we worked really closely with Aleppo NGO. We're wonderful. And so, as people were coming for events, like they would kind of present the work we were doing and see who was interested, or reaching out on one-on-one to people. Um, and then for like our Artsakh collection, we trained two young women from Artsakh after like while we were because we started the collection, we were in Armenia last fall, and then trained two people to keep keep going, and they were from Artsakh, so it was kind of a lot of like their contacts. Um, in yeah, some of the South America collections was like first going to an agump or a church and talking to some of the leaders there, and then they present to their friends. Um, yeah, and then now kind of two different doing ways of like posting online, like we're here, who is interested in doing a testimony, and that's like gotten some people. Um, so yeah, different methods that are some more one-on-one, some more like institutional.
And does promotion of the finalized materials kind of follow the same structure? Like it's through the partners, it's through the communities, it's through social media. Do you have specific ways, like once you have a new collection that's finished, how do you promote it? How do you publicize it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because we have such a problem with getting them all online, I think we haven't done too much of that yet. Um, which is something we want to, because it like, then promoting them gets more people interested and then reaches this phase where maybe then people have ideas of how to use the the collection. So we've been thinking more recently of how to fix the problem of that you probably all know. It's like, you know, we use the funding to pay like the transcribers and translators, but there's so much like in between admin work that's all just kind of volunteer based. So trying to fix that problem first so that we have more ready to promote online and then get to that those strategies.
Just to return to the chat for a moment. Um, Nora had made a comment, offering internships to students is a great way to engage with new generations that would like to help, but they do not know where to start. Reaching out to Armenian student associations will be very useful.
Yeah. Yeah, students we've been had some interns over the years, but that's definitely great to keep.
Mhm.
And kind of also to other Lori's point of like teaching students experience how to do this with us, and then maybe they make their own projects out of it or keep going.
Mhm. And then Ani Bagdasaryan asked, how do you fund this work?
Yeah. Yeah, so we've been very appreciative, gotten a few. So our first summer, it was through a Projects for Peace grant. So that like an organization kind of based out of Middlebury give stu undergrad students like $10,000 for a summer to plan a project. So that was like our initial funding for that summer. And for like some of the initial like website, building out the website and getting things going. And then but that's when Anush and I had underestimated how much work like all the follow-up would have been. So then since then, as we've grown, have like applied through grants. Most like almost all our funding now, I would say, is through Armenian organizations. So like AGBU, Hovnanian, Gulbenkian, and all their like language and Armenian communities work. And then trying, like as I mentioned, trying to be creative about who else might be interested as like from non-Armenians. So got like a oral history grant last summer and then like partnered with yeah, different like Hispanic organizations for some of the South America work. So maybe like yeah, trying different models for each and then in some of the collaborations, like other organization may say like we have some funding because this is something the community and our funders want, but we don't know how to execute it. So it's like they'll fund some of the transcription work, but we're kind of working together to get the project going. Yeah. Yeah, definitely the most expensive thing is transcription because
Yeah, yeah.
especially in Armenian, there's now we have this cool automated Armenian Western Armenian thing, but uh there's not like as much automated transcripts for Armenian.
Hmm. Well, I think you're doing the correct way, which is diversifying your funding
And it's
sources.
yeah, yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah.
And then it all kind of is in like stops and starts. So it's like, okay, we're doing this and then we can do this.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thinking more about that, the long term.
Yeah. Um, Ani Boyajan had asked, are interviews in all these communities ongoing? If so, how can people who have done oral histories participate?
Yeah. Yeah, mostly, yeah. So it's not even once we have something more built out for so like for Syria, we might stop having like a big concerted effort in that, but always if someone was interested in adding to the collection, we would be open to it. So whether that's through like a one like someone doing like a one-off, like I just want to interview someone in my family and submit it, or a student, or just a volunteer saying I want to like over the summer do a bunch, kind of just like tailor different collaborations or connections. So I'll put our email, my email on the website in case anyone is interested or wants to send someone our way. Oops, don't do that.
Um, Tommy, I have a question from another direction. So, we're an organization, an archival and library organization, and um, how can we support projects like yours?
Yeah, I think one of the I yeah had not heard of the group before, so I was very excited, like so excited to be reached out to, and like also excited someone knew about Rerooted, because I feel like that's our problem, but I feel like some of like sometimes can be more of like the technical aspects, so like already at the beginning of the call, wait, I wrote it somewhere in a different note I was talking about the like cattle OC. Wait, I wrote it down, but I lost it. The cataloging, or other websites. So I think on some of the more technical aspects could be helpful, and then also just always kind of like learning about what different people are doing. Because I'm sure all of you are involved in so many great projects and kind of cross promoting, um, building a network that knows about each other's work.
Yeah, definitely.
First
Yeah.
of all, I want to applaud you for all you've done, you and Anush, the work, the reach
Well,
you have. It's really incredible. Is there a specific community or language that you're looking for that you know hasn't been completed?
Yeah. I think like Nora always already said Iran, we've been thinking, and then also we have like again a few one-offs, but like a more concerted effort in Turkey, so like in Istanbul um is a big one. We have a project right now in Jerusalem. So that's like we have to get it published and everything, but that's been started. Um so I think like kind of what maybe we want to focus on next would be Iran and Turkey, as like kind of like a bigger community to kind of focus on. But always open to kind of anything.
Okay. We are at the top of our hour. Um, I feel like we could all keep talking about this for a very long time. But I mean, that's exactly why we do these sorts of events because we really want to connect with people and projects like you, and we're happy to serve as, consultants or advice givers or whatever
Yeah.
you need moving forward. So let's maintain that connection and that contact and talk more moving forward. Um, are there any final questions before we wrap up?
Yeah, and I just
No?
want to say, yeah, thank you so much again. And I would, yeah, love to stay in connection with Yala and come to events and yeah, keep being connected.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. This was amazing and fantastic to listen to. Um, I feel like I want to go explore your website more now, and I want to tell everyone I know about it. So
Awesome. Yes, and really at any point, like if something doesn't work on the website, you're like, oh, this would be cool, just please let us know. We like really want to keep improving.
we'll do. All right. Thank you again so much. This was excellent. And everyone knows this was recorded, so we will be posting this on our website soon so that for anyone who couldn't make it today, they can watch it later or we can rewatch it. All right. So thank you again and
Thank you.
uh, see everyone later.
Enjoy
Thank
the
you.
weekend.